Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhodes on the Buy Here Pay Here morning show. Take it away, you two.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Back with you from Pennsylvania. Got Nik Dumin, fellow dealer. We got a little bit of echo on this side. Let me see if I can correct that. And we're just wrapping up a consulting visit over here, and happy to have the chance to spend some time with Nik and talk about his business and kind of just in general. Nik, we want to talk about your struggles as a growing Buy Here Pay Here dealer. They're not unfamiliar, but first, before we do all that, I gotta just kind of tell you what a great time I've had being here in Pennsylvania. I shared with you, it's just spectacular. It's beautiful up here. And so Nik's in a town of Tyrone, which is not far out of State College, where I'm staying. I can't miss the opportunity to find out. I'm confused. I thought Penn State was the Nittany Lions. So what's all the reference to the Beavers or Beaver Stadium?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I have no idea. Yeah.
I will have to ask somebody's listening. Let us know.
Definitely the Nittany Lions. I'm not sure about Beaver Stadium.
Yeah, I keep seeing the Beaver stuff everywhere. There's reference to Beaver. I'm confused. I don't understand where it's coming from. But anyway, it's been a wonderful visit. And, I think for our conversation today, we're just wrapping up. And by the way, this session is pre-recorded. I wanted to kind of scroll that because I want to make sure people that are tuning in know that we're not going to see their comments. But the thing to know about this visit is, a lot of the things that we see you wrestling with are, we're not any different than what we see with some of our other dealers that we work with. And as you and I, we're both on social media together. I mean, we see the comments, we see people kind of wrestling with the stuff. And you might just recap quickly, like what was kind of on your mind when you reached out and you talked about scheduling the visit? Like, what were you trying to kind of get dialed in?
Yeah, so we just spent some years kind of putting the things in place and recon and service and reinsurance, and just kind of felt like we were in a place where we were ready to go. And I really just wanted Jim to come out here and kind of give us his perspective and make sure that we have all the things in place we need to have in place in order to successfully grow and not just kind of flying by the seat of the pants, which is how I sometimes tend to do things.
You're definitely not alone in that one either. Like, we certainly work with a lot of dealers who are kind of winging it and figuring it out. And to that end, you figured out a lot of stuff. Like your reinsurance is new and that's working well. Your service business is working great. That's really what you came from. You had been a tech yourself, and so you kind of learned it and stepped into the retail side of the service business, and that just looks great. I mean, your business looks excellent. It's stable. You've got good revenue over there, and so you make your living there. That covers most of your overhead in the building, right? So you've got that going for you, and then you start to add a little bit of retail sales, and now Buy Here Pay Here sales, and so you've kind of limped along into adding some contracts. And now you've got a little cash flow off that. You're not servicing that in-house. You're using an outside servicing solution, right? Yep. And that seems to also be going well. Your collection numbers look excellent. So one of the things that happened with Nik as we work through is, we do what we call a SWOT analysis, that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We also went into a gap analysis, and we walked pretty painstakingly through the process of incoming cars and how that works, because we're trying to identify the bottlenecks in your particular situation. I felt like we talked through and kind of arrived together on kind of where the challenge is for you. So now it's a matter of figuring out, okay, if we're going to grow, which that's kind of one of the first decisions, we got to figure out, do we really want to grow, right? So we mapped out yesterday, okay, if we did the marketing and leads and we got ourselves some applications and sales, we feel like we know how to get that part done. And then we look at the recon side of it. If we can clear up some of those bottlenecks and get some inventory flow from that side, then capitalization really is kind of right in the middle. Is if we solve this one, and we solved this one, and now we got a chance to start cranking some sales. Obviously, in Buy Here, Pay Here, that's going to eat up some capital. So we also had the opportunity while I was here to meet with potential private investor and go through that. So I think especially in light of just yesterday evening, I put a poll out there on this thing about additional sales locations, right? Because you and I touched on that during this visit. Does it make sense for you to grow? And so I think for today, I'd like to just talk through that in a little more depth, because it's amongst the things that we have to figure out. In your case, it's not a near-term decision, because you first need to kind of identify how to clear up the bottleneck and get inventory flowing better. And that's what I think you shared with me. What was it that you heard Brent Carmichael say at BHPH United?
Yeah, so I was ready to add a salesperson and go just go like that. But then once sat through his seminar there, it was if you don't have recon figured out, you're not ready to grow. I'm pretty sure it's just
kind of the gist of it. Yeah.
You can't get parcel a lot.
Buy Here, Pay Here people.
You're not ready to grow, and so I would say we kind of talked through that, and it seems to be true. So shout out to our friend Brent Carmichael. His name was mentioned here, and that's good advice. It's like we really can't. We got to kind of fix all three. The sales funnel and the traffic. I think you recognize that's probably an easier one to sort of resolve. But we can't produce enough sales if we can't get them through service, get them recon properly. And then in your case, you're doing a lot of salvage title stuff, which means going through, it's going to go through a body process. And they do a really nice job, by the way. Nik's operation, they do a tremendous job of taking those cars, buying them well, running them through recon. They kind of stick to certain body models, and that lets them kind of use parts off of others, and so that part works really well. It's just limited capacity that you can produce through that process, and so we've kind of figured out that also in this case limits your sales to a degree, because that's where you're comfortable, that's what you know. And so when we start stepping into clean title stuff, you got to figure out how that part kind of works. So that's a big part of what we spend our time working through with Nik on this visit, is trying to figure out what does make sense in terms of adding clean title. Nik's like a lot of dealers that we work with in terms of manpower. You got plenty of manpower on the shop and service side. When it comes to sales and administration and that kind of stuff, then it's difficult, because you're kind of handling sales right now, and the volume is reasonable enough you can make that work. And as you grow, these are amongst the things we need to figure out. So we're kind of, like I said, it's not too different than a lot of the people we meet, in that's the challenge. Is it's people and getting the process to flow. And even if we get that part working, we need dollars. We need dollars to have people, and so it's just kind of the part of the deal. And so I hope, we've obviously worked through some of that. I think the bigger thing for me on the growth side is just, and we got Benjamin Clifford, another name drop out there for our dealer friend, Benjamin Clifford, who we had an interesting conversation in social media around this thing about cash flow versus growth. And I won't share with you here what Amanda Sanchez said about the conversation, but because it's not appropriate for some of our listeners maybe. But anyway, the thing that came up was, what is smart growth? Like, how much capital? And so I'm of the opinion that, from a pure business standpoint, it is sensible to take advantage of economies. And so as we talked about at the course of your visit here, is like, the next 100 contracts will cost you less than the first 100 contracts. So it's like, we know that, we'd like to take advantage of that, but we have to be able to move in that direction in a way that is, comfortable, sensible. You're a very young guy, so I think one of the things for you is that we don't have to move at any kind of, crazy pace. We can be thoughtful and methodical, which I share with you is kind of my approach anyway. But then if we do that and we're smart about the money, it's my belief that capital and debt, when it's introduced in a smart way, the right structure, and you have to have discipline and some things built in there to make sure it works well. But smart capital is really helpful in this business, and it helps you take advantage of those economies that we're talking about. But kind of talk me through, like, you're now wrestling with this idea of adding additional sales locations and adding a couple of people potentially to the team. So where's your head right now after, spending a couple of days together? What do you feel like you might want to do about that?
Yeah, I think that,
it's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of Joe and say hello
Oh, you're
to
fine.
Jim and Michelle Rhodes.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's right.
Take it away,
You know,
you two.
the big thing for me from this trip is just like the bottlenecks that we found. Yeah, I certainly think I have some time. It's going to take me some time to figure that out, probably. And, you know, if we're going to outsource, find the vendors, and
Wake
guys
up,
we can trust
buyer payer people.
and go through that.
It's
But
a beautiful
you know,
day.
but once
Go
if
grab
we
yourself
can
another cup of
funnel,
Joe and say hello
you know, enough
to Jim and
units
Michelle
still alive,
Rhodes
you know,
on the
I
Buy
think
Here Pay Here morning show.
at that point
Take
it might
it
make
away,
sense
you two.
just because of our real estate limitations. We're limited on our space down there, and just kind of separating sales and service. And to your point with the accounting, like, you know, if they were separated, it was technically, I guess, would be like
Wake
two
up,
separate entities.
buyer payer people. It's a beautiful
It'd be easier
day.
to separate
Go grab
expenses that
yourself
way.
another cup of Joe and say
Yeah,
hello to
But
Jim
also,
and Michelle
yeah,
Rhodes
drive
on the
sales
Buy
in
Here Pay Here
different
morning
markets.
show.
State colleges,
Take it away, you two.
much more prominent market for for used car sales, and I think it could work. But there's a lot of stuff to figure out, and
yeah.
along with people we know managing.
Wake up, buyer payer people.
I know what it's like to manage two
It's a
separate
day.
locations
Go
in
grab yourself
service.
another cup of Joe
But,
and
you know,
say
I'll
hello
promote
to Jim and
community sales,
Michelle Rhodes on the Buy Here Pay
collections,
Here
stuff
morning
like that.
show.
Sure, and I think one of the things too, you mentioned the financials, like this is also something that we run into, and of course, we work with accountants and CPAs and this sort of thing, and often working with the dealer CPAs directly. And so I think one of the things, it's challenging because you almost have like three departments now. You have service and sales, and then I would kind of almost treat Buy Here Pay Here as collections, things separately from that. And so that means that, it's challenging because you ask, well, you meant payroll for a runner. Does the runner work for Buy Here Pay Here, or do they work for service? And the answer is yes, all of the above, right? They work for, so it's hard to split that out. So I'm not suggesting that we go to a ton of administrative effort to split that stuff out. But for somebody coming in from the outside and trying to help advise, when the financials are kind of all pressed together and everything's in one category of sales, then it's challenging for me to help you from that standpoint. And it's going to be challenging for you to manage it yourself in terms of knowing, globally, you can look at it and see operationally we're in good shape. And you're like a lot of dealers that we work with, even at a fairly low volume of Buy Here Pay Here, your situation is similar in that your P&L show plenty of profit, you're well profitable, your margins are excellent, but you still are fighting the cash thing because you've got some funding and you've got some access to capital, but we're using that and we're growth, so we're profitable, but we're still going to be starved for cash. And so we got to figure out the capitalization piece, especially if you're going to increase your sales volume, which I think is appropriate, especially to help, if you're seeing your market, I can see that you have the opportunity to sell more. Now we just got to figure out if it makes sense, and when it makes sense to step up the sales side. So you've got some opportunity to work on the service side and the efficiencies to kind of work on the pipeline and get the cars moving through a little faster. Among the opportunities for you, which would be like a lot of the dealers again that we work with, is technology. Like I know you're managing a lot of that stuff manually and a lot of phone calls and this and that. So I think as you move forward, I would just say you're going to want to investigate some of the technology that's out there for service management to help kind of move those efficiencies and help you better visualize, where things are in the pipeline. And I know you said that you look forward to being able to give more of your attention to the recon side of your business, and maybe be less involved in the administration and the sales side of what you're involved in now. So those are the things that it's easy for us to see coming from the outside. Obviously, you and I talked about that. The thing having an independent set of eyes, like when we come in and do these kind of visits, I know that amongst the thing you look forward to in any dealer is an independent set of eyes. Like I feel an obligation in those situations to share with you what I observe. Doesn't mean it's always a problem. It's just an observation, and then we talk through, what recommendations you might have based on that observation. But yeah, it helps obviously having experience seeing the stuff from outside, seeing other operations, and knowing kind of where the opportunities are for you. Because it's hard. I know you've been to a couple of conferences. You said you haven't been to one yet that has an expo hall. So again, back to the technology, right? It's like meeting all the people, looking at all the technology options, doing some demos.
Sure.
Yeah, you definitely have some opportunities in that area because I just see that you've got a tremendous chance to do that. So we're we know that as you do that, you'll have a chance to increase your business that way. But I think I'm just my suggestion based on what I've seen is that I'd be patient. You're in a pretty healthy place. We hope we're going to get some investment that's going to make sense for you longer term, and that's going to let you, move at whatever pace makes sense. And so now, it just looks to me like as you kind of make this decision about growth, we also just did the poll, and I've forgotten the numbers, but you said that, and we can refer to the poll and put the poll in the comments of the
16 said it was a great idea, 34 said never again, and 44 was neutral, I think.
Neutral, okay. So what he's talking about is the poll was one that I just put out last night that asked, for those of you that had multiple sales locations, what's your perspective on having additional sales locations? So it was a very small number, a smaller number that said it was definitely a good thing for us, right? And then the rest were in the kind of the neutral or never again kind of environment. So it's something to be mindful of because we know that is the true of the body of dealers in these. It's a pretty informal poll. Then you look at somebody like America's Car Mart that's sitting over there with 130 locations across the country, and we know that it's possible to scale and have it work well. Takes money and good management, and I'm not suggesting that you or anybody else needs to have 100+ locations, but we also know it's possible. So we just know that as you grow, you got to decide, and you're a long way from, in my mind, you're a good ways from even making a decision about a second location. It's just that as you work inside the business now in location number one, it gives you a chance to think about what are the pieces that I would need to put in place. So we worked through this with you already, through virtual coaching a while back, is this idea of starting to think about all the things that you currently do that could be moved to somebody else. So when you think about that, then and I also urge you to start recording with an Otter app or whatever those things that you can use your highway time. You have a hard time getting away from the phone. You get a lot of phone calls, but if you can use your highway time or any other downtime to be able to record the stuff that you're doing so that you think ahead to having those archives, and as you start to hire and train people, that you can start to move those responsibilities to somebody else. I know it's hard to think about right now because you're in the fire and trying to make things happen right away. But I would just say those are the things that gives you now an opportunity to think about, if I am going to grow, what are the pieces now that kind of keep us from growing? What are the things that I find that are on my desk or in my scope of responsibility currently that I could give to somebody else? And as we hire and grow. So these are just things that I think most dealers who would tune into the show, that there are a ton of people that we meet that are in a similar situation. They're new enough. You see the same questions I see out there on Facebook. It's like a lot of folks are winging it and figuring it out. To your credit, you've done a lot of this with very little coaching, and you built a nice framework for a really great business, and you're profitable. Not everybody can say that, right?
Take it away, you two.
Yeah, on paper, right? Yeah. So we know that pain, our phantom profit, or paper profit, but you have some very real profit considering your service side of your business. So yeah, I would refer to you, and we can wrap up here, but I would say that I would refer folks back to the episode we did a while back on cash flow and how to analyze cash flow. And I would recommend people separate the cash flow in their buy here, pay here operation. And we've had some clients doing this recently, and it's pretty telling. It's good information where we can say, if you just look at the actual direct cash flow, because a lot of folks are doing accrual accounting or whatever. We want to look at direct cash, like what went out of our bank account for buy here, pay here in operating expenses, what went out of our bank account for purchasing cars and reconditioning cars. That's our negative cash flow that I would say associated with buy here, pay here. There's some other things that are more like balance sheet items, obviously when you get into reinsurance and some of those kind of things, so you can list that stuff, but I'm just looking at like the question for me is your buy here, pay here operation by itself generating positive cash flow? So if you're paying for side notes or reinsurance, the question is that coming out of your pocket or is that coming out of the business? Is the business producing a positive cash flow that it's funding the reinsurance and some of these other things? And whatever you might pay yourself, for example, it's like, is that coming out of my pocket or is it, and that's why we end up off the negative. So it's just a question of slow growth versus rapid growth. And it's also a question of management so that you can make the decision about the timing for you. I would say you need to have the information that all of us as managers and dealers need to have good information on our desk and timely information so that we can make a judgment about those things. But yeah, I think it's been a great visit. I've enjoyed being here. It was nice to be able to sit with a private investor and introduce them to some of the pieces. That's always fun for me to introduce them to that.
Really helpful just to be right in front of them, run through the numbers.
Yeah.
We did that virtually, but
grab yourself another cup of
challenging.
Joe and say hello to Jim and
Yeah.
Michelle Rhodes on the Buy
You mean we did it with that person virtually before, and then we did it in person this time? And so yeah, it was good to actually meet them and be able to answer some of their questions. And but yeah, it looks favorable. I think that could be a good situation for you. So I think that does fall in the category of smart capital. And now we just got to figure out. Obviously, there's still a little negotiation to be done on the final rate or terms on that. But everything looks favorable. It looks like it'll probably be a good scenario for both of you. And so yeah, it just takes discipline, right? The discipline into the plan and stick to it. But yeah, I would just say again, I can congratulate you. Like you've got a really nice business. You've worked hard and created a lot. You've got a good team of people over there that seem to enjoy their work. You've got a good culture. That goes a long way, and especially as you start to build. And so now the challenge is just become for you is finding ways for you to let go. We talked about this, and this is natural. Like it's challenging as you move forward. You know that put somebody in a sales chair, instead of that being you. That makes sense. It's a hard thing to transition. It's hard to let go of some of those responsibilities, but that's where the advisor from outside can come in and say, there's going to come a point. You're going to have to let go of that stuff, and so it's kind of just preparing yourself mentally for how to do that. And start to take steps now, so that when that happens, that it can go well. It might not go perfectly. Probably won't go perfectly. They're not going to say exactly the same thing that you would say. But it's part of how we grow. Is to start to develop people and put them in those chairs. And so, yeah, I just see a lot of opportunity for you. So we can probably wrap up. Anything else come to mind for you that we should share with folks about the visit here?
No, I don't think it's a great visit, and super thankful. Just had an outside perspective to kind of work through all the things that are hard to see when you're trapped in it.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I'm glad.
On the Buy Here, Pay Here morning show. Take it away, you two.
For those folks who haven't been up, you got to get to this little the rolling hill.
Wake up, Buy Here, Pay Here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of Joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhodes on the Buy Here, Pay Here morning show. Take it away, you two.
Thanks for joining us. We'll let you know about our session on Friday.
Wake up, Buy Here, Pay Here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of Joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhodes on the Buy Here, Pay Here morning show. Take it away, you two.